Yeah. Okay. Hey everyone. I think it's about time that we start. Welcome to Getting Your App in the Internet workshop. It's an introduction to infrastructure engineering to host your app in the internet. My name is Prince, and I'm a developer experience software engineer in Atlassian. Been there for quite a number of years now. So yeah, my role is focused a lot in helping developers in getting their cool stuff up there in the world. But yeah, the goal of this workshop is that hopefully after this workshop, you'll be able to understand what's involved in hosting your app, but also the aspect of like, you're going to get your hands dirty in the aspect of like, you're setting this up. We're going to be learning this from first principle. And what I mean by first principle is that we're going to be focusing on the very ground detail of like what's involved in how the system works. And hopefully that when you learn this first principle, whether you choose AWS ECS, GCP, Kubernetes, Microsoft Azure, whatever it may be, under the hood, they kind of all just do the same thing. So there's a little bit of prerequisites in this workshop. I hope that you have a Docker image that's already published in a registry. If not, it's all right. We have a couple of one of those. Hopefully, someone in your group that you're working with has a DigitalOcean account as well. We'll be providing the domain name for this particular workshop, but just in case you want to do this workshop again in some point in time for your own apps, that's kind of like part of what you need. If you don't have a DigitalOcean account now, there will be someone here in this group, and you just have to work with them. But yeah, now let's begin. Firstly, what do you need to host your app in the internet? Well, firstly, you need a server. A server is a computer that can essentially run your server-side application, such as, let's say, Django, the one that you're using, and maybe even later on for front ends is a static app file server to serve HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That's the first one. The second one is you need a domain name. A domain name is something like, let's say in the browser, people can type, hey, google.com, that kind of thing. Google.com is a domain name. So you'll need something similar to that one, let's say myapp.codersforcauses.org. And yes, you'll be able to govern that. So once you have that one, let's say you have a friend, let's say he's in Canada, you just check in the website and they'll be able to visit. And of course, your app. Now, how does it work all under that case? When you have your browser right there, you type myapp.codersforcauses.org. Your browser will then contact what's called the domain name system. Domain name system will take a look at myapp.codersforcauses.org, and then it will see it from the registry and say, hey, this is pointed to 10.0.0.100. This set of numbers is what's called the IP address. And if you've done a lot of computer science, of course, you would know that an IP address is something that you would use to talk to one computer to another. So in this case, this is the IP address of the server that we are about to talk to. So now your client browser right there uses the IP address that's returned by the DNS to contact that server, and that's actually when you initiate the HTTP request right there. Your server, your computer, will have, let's say, Django running right there. Django, let's say this is your server app. You may perform an HTTP request, and you were asking for certain information. It could return a JSON response, But let's say it's not Django, Maybe you're running another app right there. Maybe it's a front-end application right there. And that's also another case of like instead of it sending JSON response, it will be sending HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then that's when it gets to your browser, and then that's how it's rendered. At a very simple case, the entire interaction of the internet is summarized into just this one diagram. And we will come back to this diagram again and again throughout the workshop. So now let's move on to the next section of this workshop. It's like we'd like to create a model of what a server and client model looks like at a very simple case. This part of the workshop, you don't have to follow this. You could just watch this. We'll have a follow interactive at a later point in time. But what we're wanting to achieve over here is like at a simple case, what does a server and client model looks like? So firstly, I've turned on the hotspot of my phone. So now the laptop right here is connected to my phone right here. So I connect connect the laptop to the hotspot, and I'll create this new file over here called index.html. And I just have a simple thing. I just have a hello world right there. So it'll just be a page. So let me open that up. So index.html over here. And then I just paste it right there. And then there's a command over here. It's just a command to serve that. Let me just zoom this in. It's just a command that serves up this particular file in a port, and that port is port 8000. Let me just open that up. Okay, localhost 8000. So currently, so far, there's nothing special. You've done this before in your projects. You're running things at localhost 3000. You're running things at localhost 8000, and it's running, and you can see it in your browser. But under the hood, what your computer does over right here is actually localhost has a particular special IP address. The localhost is actually an IP address called 127.0.0.1. And that's whenever your browser looks at that one, it actually uses that as an IP address right there. So far, nothing special. It's just the laptop is the server, and the laptop is the server, and there's also the client. But let's go a little bit further to that one. Now, what about the case where hey, my laptop over here is in the same network as my my phone right here. Why can we just not have an example of the laptop is the server, and the phone is now the client right at this. So, firstly, you'll need to know a little bit about networking in this part case. How do you know the IP address of your laptop in this very simple network? There's a command that I have put up right there. But for Mac, you could either go with the command line, or you could just go over here. Let me just get that, system report, wherever that went, and then networks. Go to networks. I believe I'm connected via Wi-Fi right now. So this is the IP address right now, 172.31. What I can do is that I can connect to that particular IP address with my phone, 172.31.97.209. And then I'll be going to port 8000. For the recording, it will be, let me just put that here. Recording is like that. But you can see over right here, that's my phone connected to the laptop right there. So it's just a very simple setup, as you can see right here. You'd notice that there's nothing special about a server. A server is it's a computer. It's running somewhere and it's serving somewhere. And in this particular relationship, the server is my laptop, my phone is my client at this particular case. So far, so good, right? Easy to understand? Okay. Now, let's go a little bit step further on that one. So far, we've gotten that network setup. But the thing is, no one talks to by their browser, by their IP address. Most of the time, people use in the browser something like a domain name. But let's start with what's called a local domain name first. In your laptop, there's a file called host under the etc directory. So let me just show you what that looks like here right now. So I'll just open this up, etc host right there. And then there's a couple of domain names already pointed out over right there. You'd notice localhost is right there. But theoretically speaking, I could just have another one, such as, for example, over right here. Kubernetes.docker.internal points to that one. So in the browser, I can do this one, replace 127.0.0.1 into that particular domain name. So now I have kubernetes.docker.internal as the domain name I have, and then I'm looking at it at port 8000. So we're going back to this diagram that I showed you I'm showing you here. So my client browser over here was talking to kubernetes.something docker internal right there. Goes to DNS. DNS will return 127.0.1, and then client browser will then perform this entire shake of getting that hello world index.html. So yeah, going on that one is now, so far, I guess, congratulations, you've successfully hosted your app, but it's only in the local network. This particular local network setup will probably work for a number of cases. It will work for cases such as, for example, if you're, there was one time I was in Malaysia. In Malaysia, I think I was visiting KLCC Surya. And then there was a bunch of kiosks right there. They had some interactivity, you know. You touch the iPads right there, and it changes something in the lights right there. So that actually, fun fact on that one is that actually, if you swipe at the top right there, you'll actually see the IP address coming from where the iPad is actually talking to a server locally. So yeah, but of course, that's local network. However, there's a couple of things you need to consider. Let's say I want this app, not just for my phone and whoever's connected to my hotspot, but I want it to be an app that can be used by anyone and anywhere in the world. You know, that would be quite great. But of course, while you can use your laptop to serve all sorts of things in the internet, serve your laptop here in Australia, and then someone in Canada will talk to your laptop right there, it's possible. However, there's a couple of things you need to consider. Firstly, your laptop is not always on. You know, you're using your laptop, you're going somewhere, everywhere right there. It's not always plugged in. It may lose battery. And if it loses battery, of course, your application will go down. The second thing is that your laptop is not always connected to the internet, you know. Sometimes you're traveling down a particular car right there. You may not have your data turned on right there. And then third is, so far, the domain name that we've done is that we only recorded the domain name locally through the network, locally to my laptop. But other devices don't know that domain name. Other devices don't know what kubernetes.docker.internal is. You know, so you'll need somewhere in the internet of which the DNS is recorded, saying, hey, my app.codersforcauses.org is pointed to a particular IP address. So now this is the interactive part of this workshop, and we will be focusing on hosting your app on the cloud. So I hope your laptop is ready to go because we're about to get things started right here. So if you're watching this workshop, you may want to go to workshops.codersforcauses.org, and this is the link to that one. The title of the workshop is Getting Your App in the Internet. And for the people that have DigitalOcean, please log in, and we'll start from there. Okay, hopefully everyone's ready. So a droplet is a droplet in DigitalOcean. They do fancy names over right here, but what it essentially is that it's just a Linux that you can rent, you know. And what we're about to do over here is like we're renting a computer up there in the cloud, you know. And like renting, they provide a little bit of the infrastructure for your internet and also your electricity that goes towards this machine. So we're going to be renting a computer right here. It's loading. Hopefully my internet does not disappoint me. Okay, sorry about that one. Okay, and when you're renting a computer up there in the internet, there's a couple of options that you could choose. The first option that you could choose is, where do you want to be renting this computer out of, you know? And usually, you would want your server, your computer, somewhere a lot of people will use it. You know, it's just, I would say, basic physics. You know, if your users are in Australia, even with the speed of light, you'd like to decrease the distance going from anyone's devices going to your server. So in our case over here in Perth, we could either choose Singapore or Sydney. There's a couple of consideration right there if you ever deal with deployments. A lot of countries now are enforcing what's called data residency, such that hey, if you want your app operating at, let's say, Australia, you may need to host your things in Australia, something like that one. I think it's much more a thing in Europe. But the next thing you'd like to get to is in the section of like what OS do you want to pick. I would pick something from the marketplace, something that already has Docker installed. I believe there's a marketplace item over here that's already, it's Ubuntu, but it also already has Docker installed. Of course, you can pick something from the OS right there, whether you want Ubuntu Debian as part of your operating system right there. But for me, because I just want to simplify this workshop, I'll just go with a Docker right there. So you select that one, and then the size. Size, we just need a basic server right here. But it depends on, there's a couple of things to consider. And it really depends on like, how do you want your app to work? Is your app a lot of CPU intensive? Is your app much more, it holds much more memory? But if you just want something simple, basic or general purpose, will do you fine. And then for me, let's go with the cheapest option. And then I want a $6 per month operation right here. And then now for the authentication method, it's your choice whether you want to pick SSH key or password for this particular workshop. For me in particular, I prefer to use SSH key. It's simply because the SSH key is always stored in my computer, and it's just a matter of like, I can just connect as long as I use this computer. So it's very straightforward to set up the SSH key. You just follow this part, run SSH keygen right there, and then when you done the SSH keygen, let me just show you really quickly my setup. So there's a couple of things over right here. I do have my IDRSA pub over here. You would want to use your public key right here. So your private key will need to sit in your computer. Your private key is what's used to connect to the remote server. And then the public key over here is what the server knows. So that's how it knows that you are who you say you are. And you put it right there. And then, of course, you put your name right there. Yeah, do that one. And then after that, yeah, I think I'll just select all right there. And then I'll create a droplet. Yep, please do it. I'll give you a bit of time to create your droplet. If you need help, let me know. Everything good? Yep. Everything good? Yep. What's up?
I just need help finding it.
Okay. So your public key would be in the SSH right there, IDRSA pub. So that's yours.
So I
Then,
can just copy and paste that.
yep, PB copy. Yep. Anyone need help? Anyone need help? Yep.
Yeah, scroll down in the whole page, and then the header would like mess around.
If you already have a public key, how you get to it is essentially you do a cat SSH right there. It's a special path right there. Press tab. Don't copy your private key. Copy the one that ends with .pub, and then do a pipe, and then what's called PB copy. This will put this in your clipboard. So enter that, and then you can just copy it anywhere. Yep. Everything good so far? Yeah. Everything good? Everything good?
Sorry, I forgot what to do after that.
Yeah. So enter a file in which to save the key. You just press enter right there. No passphrase, don't need it. Right there. Now, when you're right there, you now have actually. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Just need. Oh.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry. I'll just like. Do you want me to drag it up?
Yes, please. I can. Okay. Hopefully, it actually did it in the SSH path. The SSH right there. and then right there. So now it's available right there. ID something, and then hope. I can't remember if this. No, that's not a command in. Yeah. So now you just copy this part. Copy. Hopefully that copied it. Copy. Yep. That's that. And then just put the name right there. In my time setting up, yep. If SSH key is hard, just use password as well. Password should be fine too. In my time up running or teaching a lot of these connections, sometimes even just a space or like an enter ruins the SSH key when you're copy pasting, and then things just doesn't work. But anyways, are we waiting on anyone so far? Is everyone ready to go right in the next part? I presume so. But if you do need help, please do call out. So now, once you've created your droplet is now a computer up there, right there in the cloud. And for my case, it's running at 170.64.202.50. So now let's connect to this one. And how you connect to it is firstly copy the IP address right there. And then from your terminal right there, you type SSH. I believe the username is called root. And then press an @ sign right there. And then put the IP address right here. It'll tell you like, hey, it's this one is a new connection. So you just press yes right there. So now what you can see right here is, let me just scroll this up. Right there. I am now connected to the computer right there in the cloud. And when I'm right there, I can just run whatever commands. So as I've been repeating in this workshop, a server is nothing special. A server is just a computer. And in this case, the server is just running somewhere. And from here, let's start hosting an application, I suppose. If you're following the workshop, the next part of the workshop essentially does is, let's try serving just some Hello World app. Just some simple Hello World app. And the command to run is essentially right here. So while I'm right here in this particular, server, I just run this particular command. And something is now starting at that particular case. So if you wanted to visit the website that I have, you go to right there. You just put the IP address, and I believe I am running it at, there you go, port 80. Yeah, you can type in your browser, you can also type this IP address right there, and then just, you'll see this. .170.64. And 50. Yep.
Do you get paid for it?
Hmm?
I can't create it without adding my
Ooh.
payment stuff.
Yeah. Usually, so a new account will have like a credits. I think you may need to put a credit card or something like that one. But something to note is like, I think they give you like around $100 credits, and $60 per month is like easily like a year or two kind of thing. But yeah, so that it doesn't cost money. Of course, you just have to turn it off, remove the droplet after this workshop.
Oh,
But yeah. So yeah, so far, yeah, if you're visiting the website that we're building and hosting, it is available at this particular IP address, and you should be able to see it right there. Yeah, cool so far. We are almost, to a certain degree, we're almost done. You notice like the only part that's remaining over here is really two parts. One is the domain name, and then the other bit is, instead of hosting someone else's app, why don't we host our app? So now let's head on to the domain name. So the domain name is just something that makes it easy for you to be able to assign hey, this IP address, you can reach it out at this particular thing. Kendria, I think this is the part of the workshop that will need this part. So this is the Coders for Causes Cloudflare account. And the Cloudflare account is a place wherein we manage our own DNS, so our own domain names right here. So what you can do over right here is that you would want to create a CNAME right here. And then let's say, just some random thing. I'm currently doing this workshop. So the name of this workshop, let's say, get your app coders, and then this one, actually, yeah. Get your app, and then the target name is, you would want it to be this particular part. Right there. And then usually, for security purposes, you don't expose your IP address right there in the internet. So Cloudflare has this option called a proxy status, or a DNS only. What it essentially does is that Cloudflare will put a computer in front of your request, such that when the request happens, it actually goes to Cloudflare first, their IP address, and then once they have verified, let's say, you could even limit which countries you want your website to be reachable for, that type of control, or even like block certain, let's say it's a crawler instead of an actual user, you could do that too. But point being is like Cloudflare sits right there and only proxies to your application when that's what you want. So now I will press save right here. It will take, actually, my bad, I think .coders, actually, just, I think I'll just do my app eplapus .coders for cost out. And then I'll save that one. Sorry, my bad, it's actually not CNAME, it's actually the A record. CNAME is a when you're actually you use it when you have another. It's been a while since I've used it, but CNAME is like an aliasing of your website. I'm actually referring to type A. Type A means address, and then you press save right there. Hopefully, we have someone in the Coders for Causes community that's going around helping people set that up. But for this, once I've registered that one, there should be like a domain name called myapp.eplapus, myapp.eplapus.codersforcauses.org. Right there. Going good so far. Progress. Our website now has a domain name. Now, if I go to, let's say, a conference, I just say, visit this website, myapp.eplapus.codersforcauses.org. Getting there. Are we distributing the access, Kendria? No?
It's like half client project people here, so they don't told to get anything in advance either.
It's okay. If you are following along in the workshop, if you would like your IP address for this particular computer registered, just reach out a committee member and they will register it for you. Okay. But from right there, I guess let's continue with the workshop unless anyone needs help getting this set up. Okay, good so far? Okay. So we've added now a domain name for your app right there. And for the most part, that's great because it's just a matter of changing what actually runs right there, changing it to your actual application, and then you're all set. So now let's focus on actually serving your backend and frontend. This one gets a little bit tricky as well because it really varies depending on your app to another app. But a side note over right here is, so far, you'd note, I'd like to explain the particular command that we run over here. This command that we run over here, as I've said right here, is that it's just going to start an application. But what does it really mean? The app that we're starting is an app called crc check /hello world. And as you've seen right there, it's running at a local host 80 actually, and then serving this text. But of course, there's another part of this one. It's actually running at localhost 8000. Fun fact for this particular app. but we're actually exposing it at port 80, and that's the reason why, because if you've ever dealt with browsers, there's actually two important ports you have to keep in mind. Port 80 and port 443. Port 80 is HTTP. Port 443 is HTTPS. So any case wherein like you don't have to specify a port right there, that is by default going to a port 80. And that's actually an important thing to keep in mind right there. Something you'd also know is like a lot of people may ask, what's Docker's role in this particular case? So Docker makes it actually easy to run an application. And what I say about makes it easy to an application, we've never really dealt much about this particular app. I don't know whether this app is built in Python, C, Go, or Rust, you know? But like, how cool is that even if I don't know what its composition is, I am able to host it, you know? So theoretically speaking, you know, for your case, you could build an app that is running and serving at a particular port 3000, port 8000, whatever it is. You give it to me, and I don't need to know how the app is made. I could just run Docker run, and then it will serve your app. That's the purpose of Docker. You know, it makes it very portable. You tell me a particular, you tell me where you save your app, we're able to host it. And in this particular case, in the next part of the workshop, I'm modeling the repository called Django Next.js template, and a lot of people will have based on right here. In this particular template or Docker images, we have two Docker images. One is for the front end right here, Django Next.js template prod client, and this is the URL to actually run that application. And then there's also one for server, and you could see it over right here too. So I think for a lot of you, you're already seeing like how this would work. So for the app that we were hosting before, it's just crc check/hello world. We just replace that with that, and then it will run. And that's the next part of this one. However, you know, simply just running a front end, simply just running a back end, that's too simple. We still have a couple of things to keep in mind right there. And what I mean by keeping in mind is like, so there's a front end, there's the back end, there's a database that you'll need to keep in mind as well. You may need to have a static app file server as well. Because remember, if you're building Django, Django has a front end component. Front end component of Django is the Django admin that we have. So what we have right here is what's called a Docker compose. So far, we've just run Docker at like Docker run. But of course, that only runs one container. But what happens if you want to run multiple things? You want to run a database, a backend, a client, and a bunch of other things. A compose is essentially a way that basically defines how you're going to run certain things. So for example, a server. I would say that's the URL that we were dealing with. That's the app that I want to host as part of that one. Environment variables that I want to go with that one. Ports that I want to expose as part of that one. Like dependency layers as well, and so on. But for the most part, the compose file, you could read it on your own time. But what I'm trying to say over here is that there's a lot of things that we're about to run right here. Now, another part to that one is if your application is running at port 3000, port 8000, and so on, how do you make it such that your app is unified and you never have to specify a port right there? Because in my compose file, you'd notice that I was hosting Django at port 8001 or 8081, and then front end is being hosted at 3000. But I want such a way that my domain name over right here, I never had to specify 3000 or 8000 right there. You know, you want it to be like your customer or client just needs to go to this IP address, and then we will figure out how we will route them. And this is where reverse proxy comes in. And there's a little bit about networking right here. This is what the diagram looks like for what we're about to do. So you have your domain name right here. It arrives at your server. And you're only going to be able to serve at port 80 and 443. So keep that in mind, port 80 and 443. If you want without port listed in the URL. Now what we can do is like, we can perform a rule somewhere at the receiving end of ATN 443 saying that, hey, if the URL has a pattern of /API, forward it at port 8081. And then if you have a URL that's /admin and a star right there, again, forward it to 8081. Now, if we have a path, this one is for Django admin. If you ever looked into how Django admin does its HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, we would like to forward it to what's stored in the disk at /op something. And then for your front end, we'll just do a slash. This one is like, there's a precedence order right here. There's a rule evaluation order. You evaluate this first, this, and then this. So anything that wasn't part of this rule goes to your front end, and that goes to your port 3000 right here. I'll show you what the raw Nginx configuration looks like so that I'm not just talking magic sequence diagram right here. This is what it roughly looks like. But I know that there's a lot of things that you're seeing, but I'll show you the important bits. /API over right here. There's a proxy pass going to the backend. And let me just zoom that in. /admin over here. There's a proxy again in the backend. And then the static. There's just an alias on the bunch of static files right here, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then your client, or your front end. Proxy to your front end. And then this is the aliases that's about right there. So now, now that you understand that the setup of your front end and back end, now it's time to run it. So this is that part. And now if you go to that particular repository, let me just cross this out. Yeah. What I am hoping to do is I'm going to need to clone the actual code right here. Actually, if I really just want to be very simple, I could also just put the Docker Compose file right there. That's also another option. If you just want, if you want your code not needing to always be right there. So I'll put the contents of the Docker Compose production right there. This one. And then I'll put it here. Okay, and then I'll save it. Save. Okay, Docker Compose prod.yaml. So now it's saved right here. And the other thing that I need to set up, if you read your Docker Compose prod, is that you need an environment variable set up over here, .n.prod. So let me do that. .n.prod right there. And then right here, copy, paste this one. And then, of course, there's a couple of things that you need to change as part of this. So I'll just change this something, just some random string. Password, let's just do something simple, password 123. Of course, in an actual production system, you'll need to change that one, admin.com. And then the username, I'll just do admin right there. Front-end URL, I believe my front-end URL was, let me just check again. My front-end URL that I use is this one. My app, flapus, codesforcauses.org. So let's do that, put it right here. And that's how it should be constructed. Now I'll copy this, and then I'll put it right here. .n.prod, right there. Paste that in. Paste that in. Okay, hopefully that's there. Okay, now let's save. Now time to run it. Running it is just docker compose something, docker compose -f, specifying that particular thing. And -d is just to so that you can still keep your terminal right there. So now what's happening over here is your computer right there in the cloud is now downloading the images, your app, your container right there in GitHub. And once it has pulled this up, it's going to start running it. If I did everything correctly, it will just work, and there's no issues. That's how good Docker is. If you don't have Docker, you'll need to do your manual installation, install this library, install that, install this driver, that type of thing. That's the whole main point of Docker, makes life simple so that in production, in the show time of any software engineer in deployment is that you just run this one command and things just works. But we'll see. Okay, we're getting the suspense from the front end. There we go, network is now set up. Okay, some issues right there. Failure to mount, I guess. Are you trying to mount or? Okay, hang on a sec. I think there's a couple of setup that you need to do in Docker. Are you trying to mount a directory onto a file? Sorry, my bad. This is the interesting part of interactive workshop, live demos. Let's just have a look at the compose file. It's telling me is that there is problems in enable start container error during container init, error mounting Docker Nginx custom configuration. Okay, now I know what the issue was. The issue is, remember that I didn't actually clone the entire repository, and all I did is just do the actual setup. Apparently, the Nginx, what it's telling me is that there's a mount that is happening over right here, and this just doesn't exist apparently. So I have a couple of choices. I make that exist, or if I just want to make my life simple, I'll just clone the entire repository from right here. Django Next.js template. Clone this. Clone that, make it that available. Just checking that Docker, let's do Docker compose down a bit on this one for now. Down. Now remember the environment variable that I have set. I just need to move that to where I'm running it. I'll get another terminal so that we can do a number of things at the same time. So that one is handling this one. I'll now need to move .end, something like that, in the Django Next.js, and then same name, .end prod. Okay. Now, once I move that, it should be available as a .end .prod right here. There you go. Now, from the application that is where I have cloned the repository, I just do the docker compose command again. Hang on a sec. This one. And hopefully it just works. Okay, there you go. Now, time for the big show. The show of any software engineer is their deployment. I press enter right there, and hopefully, hang on a sec. Oh, I just realized that app is still running. We need to terminate the app that we were having right there. Let's just terminate every application for now. Hang on a sec. Terminate every application that's running so that we have no port conflicts or anything. This one can help too while it's stopping that. Docker kill F535, I believe. Docker PS. Now that should be turned off, which means that if I go back to the IP address right there, I think it may have just caged. Okay. Now let me just load up that config again. So docker compose run. Okay. Now if I just do this again, so of course it's going to tell me that things are no longer running. But so far, there you go. Your front end right there. Now a couple of things. So ping right there. Let me just show you like where that that network request is going. press ping over right here, and then we should see something. Ping. Actually, let me just reload this. Okay. Let me just do this. Ping. There we go. So now that's contacting my my website right there, /API/health.ping. And then if you want a Django admin, remember that we were setting that up. So /admin right there. And then admin password 123 right there. CSRF verification field. That's just a couple of things that you'll need to adjust in the environment variables. So let me just do that really quickly. Hopefully it's a simple fix. CD Django Next.js template right there. I believe there is something over here that just says debug true. So you just need to do debug false right there, and also it'll be something to do with the CSRF configuration right there. Yeah. I think I will. I think that I don't think we have a lot of time to be debugging that one, but I'll continue with the rest of the workshop. But as you can see so far, we're right there. Like the front end is functioning. The back end is also deployed right there. So for the most part, if you're going to deploy your application, it will just look like exactly what we just did. And if I'm looking at the time correctly, we started around 11:30. So with the time of explanation and the time of execution over here, you're just doing deployments in just less than 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Like how cool is that? But here's the thing: you only have to do this once, actually, and that's the next part of this section of this workshop. So far, we now have set up the infrastructure of the app that's being hosted. However, you as software developers, and when you go to professionally, you will be writing code all the time. And writing code all the time also means that you're making your app to the point that your code should always be landing in production. And there's a process of what we call in getting your code to production looks like. And that process is called the continuous deployment. Sometimes if you're doing product engineering, it's also sometimes called continuous delivery. It just means I built this feature and it's continuously going to my users and my clients. And the complete pipeline looks like this. You as a developer, you write your code and then you push your code and then you create a PR, it goes to GitHub. You merge that, it'll trigger a workflow. And that workflow will build your Docker image. Let me show you what that Docker image looks like in this particular repository that you have. So the Docker image right there is actually defined right here, and then the server, let's say Django right here, and this is what's called the Docker file. It starts up with the Python container right there, installs a bunch of things, install more things, install your Python libraries right there, and then at the end over right here, runs the command to start your application. So you start your Django application right there. So that's how building the Docker image looks like. Actually, that's just the Docker file. There's this thing called the CD pipeline. What essentially means that whenever you merge code in GitHub, it runs this sets of commands. It clones the repository. It builds your image right here. Builds and push. So it'll also deploy your image right there. And that's this part. GitHub Actions, build Docker image, and then publish image right here. But here's another thing. Within the containers that over right here, there's actually a special container right here. It's called the Watchtower. The Watchtower container over here is actually what powers, for this particular case, the continuous deployment. And what it does is that every 30 seconds, I believe, but you can configure this, it checks the GitHub registry. Is it a new image? Is it a new image? Is it a new image? And then all of us, and there will be a point in time wherein what it's running is different to what's published. And that's how you know there's a new version that has been found right there. And then what Watchtower will do is it will pull your new image right there, and then start the new container, and then take down the old container that's running. So imagine your backend, your old backend. So your old backend is running. Your new backend is now running. Now your old backend gets terminated, and all traffic now goes to your new backend. So how cool is that? You know, like in a couple of let's say you've merged your code right there, in like a span of like let's say a minute, the code that you have merged will now start to be running in production and getting served to your customers, and that's when deployment completes. So yeah, that's I guess that's for the most part this workshop. There's a lot more things when it comes to infrastructure engineering. There's a terminology we call the blue-green deployments, wherein the blue stack is the new one. Actually, the blue stack would be the old one. The green stack will just be the new one that you are running. And then when everything is blue and green is now running, you terminate the blue, and now the green is the only one remaining, which is your new app. And yeah, for small projects, Watchtower is great. However, for large projects and critical application in the future that you may build, you may use sophisticated CD tools such as AWS ECS, or even much more comprehensive deployment strategy. Blue-green and deployment is just one of the ones I've said. There's also such thing as canary deployments, A/B testing, and so on. But yeah, you're done, and congratulations. You now know how to successfully host your app in the internet. And that's really the bulk of you as a software engineer. But yeah, ta-ta!